That would be a yes. Okay, thank you, Dan. Husband Dan is hosting this meeting, so thank you very much. I'm Kathy Gleason, serving as president of Turnagain Community Council this year. So I would like to call the meeting to order at 6:35 p.m. and acknowledge, I was going to acknowledge any board members that joined us. John, you are a board member and co-chair of the Land Use Committee Land Use Committee, no meeting right now. And no other board members have joined yet. So hopefully they'll jump in soon. And next thing that we need to do is approve this evening's agenda for April 3rd, 2025. And there will be 2 amendments to consider. So if I could have a motion to approve the agenda, we'll start from there.
Motion
So moved.
to.
Okay.
John moved and Steve second.
Okay, sounds good.
Second.
Okay, I think we got our second from Steve Montooth.
Yeah.
Okay, good enough. Okay, so I will move that. Now somebody is asking if we can post the agenda in the chat. I don't know how to do that, John or Dan. Anybody know? Can we accommodate that?
Let me see if I can figure it out. I think I might be. Let me take a shot at it.
Okay, thanks, John. Okay, so two items, 2 amendments. One is just a typo correction. A little bit more than halfway down under executive board report says assembly action on AO 2025-43. That's actually AO 2025-31. So does anybody have any objections to correct that? If there's no objection, that is changed. And the second one is to add to the executive board report a quarterly treasurer's report. And that's assuming that our treasurer joins us, the Kathleen McCoy. So does anybody have any objection to adding quarterly treasurer's report under executive board report on our agenda? Okay, no objection. So we'll go back to the main motion. And is there any objection of approving the agenda with those 2 amendments?
Kathy,
Yes, John.
one thing I wanted to add, maybe under the land use committee report, is just kind of update of what's likely to happen with the comprehensive plan update. I wasn't sure if you were going to talk about that under FCC, but that's something we want to probably just bring to people's attention.
That would be great. And the
Okay.
land use.
Yep. And I'm still working on the drop the document in the chat here.
Okay, so so John would like to add under TCC committee reports, just a brief update on what's going on with a targeted update for the 2020 comprehensive plan and the 2040 land use plan. So does anybody have any objections for adding that to our agenda? If not, then we'll go back to the main agenda. So does anybody have any objections to approving the agenda with the 3 items that we discussed? If no objection, then the agenda with the amendments is approved, excuse me, no objection. Okay. Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of the March 6th, 2025 draft minutes that our secretary Chris Habich submitted. Does anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Move to approve, John. And would anybody like to second that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Does anybody have any discussion about the draft minutes? As always, we put a caveat on it that before we finalize them and get them documented. If there's any typos or clarifications or anything that needs to be amended on it, we can do that after the fact. So with that in mind, does anybody have any objection to approving the March 6th TCC minutes? Okay.
And Kathy, the agenda is now in the chat.
Oh, thank you, John. Good for you. That's just not what there's an okay, but okay. All right. Approved. Okay, so now we'll move on to announcements, and thank you those who have joined us since the meeting was called to order. So we are now on announcements, and I've got a couple of them. And then I'll see if anybody else has any. Actually, there's more that we have more announcements. We have 4 announcements. They're all good stuff coming up. So on April 26th, the Anchorage Waterways Council is sponsoring their annual Scoop the Poop Day. And there will be 2 locations that will be happening at University Lake and at Connors Bog. And that's April 26th. On May 3rd through May 3rd is Chamber of Commerce cleanup, specifically at Westchester Lagoon. And then otherwise, the Chamber sponsored cleanup is May 3rd through the 31st. So if you want to go on their website, that will explain where you can pick up bags and where you dispose of bags and all that kind of stuff. And then on May 15th through the 26th is the Anchorage Waterways Council Annual Creek Cleanup. And so Dan is the one that dug this up for me. So did it have on the website all the details about where you can get bags and so forth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So does anybody have any questions on those? So it's just some nice spring cleaning going on, coming up. Okay, so does anybody else have any announcements they'd like to share? Anybody at all? Okay, no more announcements. We will move on to what's new in Turnagain, where we just give a minute or two if anybody wants to share something going on in our neighborhood.
Wait, this is Pat.
Yes, Pat.
I couldn't find my microphone or my camera. There is a rally this Saturday at Town Square Park. What is it called? The Hands Off Rally. And that's to support hands off of Social Security, Medicare, health and social services, all of the services that are being cut by the federal government.
Wow.
If anybody, and it's well open to anybody to join us. We're marching. I probably won't be, but the group is marching from Town Square to the federal building to specifically Sullivan and Begich to lobby them if anybody's interested. Then it's at noon this Saturday at 12 Town Square. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Pat. Anybody else have anything they'd like to announce? Okay, and then does anybody want to share anything? Just a little tidbit of anything going on in our neighborhood.
I saw
Okay.
green leaves. I saw green leaves out by the airport.
Really?
Yeah, just an
Okay,
hour
then.
ago.
Okay, then.
Kathy,
Yes,
I
John.
guess one thing to share, and I was trying to find it. If I can find it, I'll drop in the chat. I think that within the last month, you and I got a notice from the airport about some of the activity of what was going to be happening in the vicinity at the detox center to potentially store fill that's going to be associated with the Taxiway Z reconstruction. And if you look at the maps they put out, it looks like there's going to be a significant amount of area that they're potentially going to place fill in, which means there's potentially going to be a lot of truck traffic that's going to be on that road. Probably, I suspect, going down Postmark and back out towards the detox center, but just for people to be aware, there could be a lot of activity in that part of the airport this summer, which could affect people who kind of informally use that area. If I can find the map during this meeting, I'll drop it in the chat.
Okay, thanks, John. Yeah, it was taxiway Z, is that what you said?
Yeah, Taxiway Z, it's on the south side of the
Yeah.
airport, but they have a lot of fill that they need to dispose of.
Yeah,
And the map that they show of where they're disposing it is in large chunk of areas between the tank farm and detox. And it's unclear exactly where they're going to put it, but I bet it's a lot of truck traffic for what that's
I
worth.
don't know, John, if you remember where the compost area is that used to be there near before you get to the detox
Ye-
center on the north side.
Yeah, I think it's actually closer to the fence line and closer to that contaminated fill area they've opened up. I don't know if they're going to go as far as into sort of the compost area itself, but it's kind of
well,
general stretch of road.
Okay.
yeah, they wouldn't do that because that's municipal land. You know, where the old Cliff Row Center is and where there used to be a composting center, that's all municipal land. That's not airport land. So, but then certainly, the road goes down. And apparently it's not PFAS contaminated, so they're not putting it in that one spot on the way out to the old Cliff Row Center, which is on airport land.
Yep.
Okay. Let's
And I
see.
found the map and I'm going to clip it and drop it in here in just a minute.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else want to share anything under what's new in Turnagain? Except maybe more truck traffic? Okay, if not, we will move on.
Kathy, I didn't
Um,
grab you quick enough. All the truck traffic, I just want to note that all the truck traffic, which is mainly FedEx and UPS up and down Northern Lights, there was an agreement way back when Lauren Lehman, I think, knows about it, where when they put those facilities in down there, they agreed not to use Northern Lights for their main thoroughfare.
Well, I actually know about that, and it did not pertain to those package delivery size trucks.
Uh,
What there was there were weight limit signs on through truck traffic, 10,000 pounds or more. And so those are, like semis and that sort of thing. And unfortunately, those were taken down mysteriously a handful of years ago now. And we have advocated to getting them up multiple times and for quite a while with no success. And that's because West Northern Lights, even from Wisconsin on west, is considered a minor arterial and not a collector. So those kinds of trucks are allowed. It's complicated and there's a long history, John.
I just brought it up.
Yeah. But if you see a large, heavy truck going through Northern Lights and on the neighborhood in and out of the airport, you should call the airport and report it because those larger ones are definitely a problem.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see. We'll move on to executive board report. There's a lot of things, but we can go through them pretty quickly. So, our next board meeting, we don't ever schedule a date this early. If you're interested in knowing when we might have our next board meeting, just please let me or any board member know, and we'll let you know once we schedule it. Our next general membership meeting, and it will be via Zoom, is May 1st, 2025, first day of May Day. So FCC delegate report and leadership training, which was the weekend of March 15th. So, I'm the FCC delegate for Turnagain Council. So it was a good long meeting, but just kind of the highlights is, used to be that, well, our policy is that councils could do an area-wide survey to their neighborhood every 3 years. but the funding really hadn't been there for quite some time. It's been a long time since Turnagain has done a postal mailer. And so you have to pay for not only the postage and the printing, but also to get the names and the names. To access those names, it's only property owners. We never could reach out to renters, which, was kind of a downside. But anyway, that's the rule of thumb in our FCC bylaws. But right now, there's going the process through potentially changing boundaries of certain community councils. It's a 10-year review going on. It's already gone through the Planning and Zoning Commission. Turnagain Community Council has weighed in on our comments on that. But there are some councils that, definitely look like their boundaries will change. And so we voted at the board meeting to allow funding for once those boundaries change for those community councils to be able to do an area-wide mailing to just let people know their boundaries have changed. They may live in a different council area, etc. So that was kind of a big deal that we discussed. And we received a presentation on all the April 1st bonds. And then we did receive a presentation from members of the planning department, including the director, Melise Babb, about the upcoming targeted housing effort. And that would be part of the comprehensive plan and land use plan. So we'll maybe talk about that a little later under land use report. Nothing's been scheduled except for a work session coming up in April 14th. That's what Melissa had told us back, about 2+ weeks ago. So might have to verify that from her. I'm not sure about that right now. But anyway, again, other stuff, we had a big full meeting, but then move on to a 2-day effort called that Federation of Community Council sponsored called Vision Through Action. And so Saturday, March 15th was board strategy planning. And that means FCC board of directors, not TCC. And so we met, I participated in that. And that again covered a lot of ground. Heather Harris from 4Acre provided some guidance for us. And the key thing was nonprofit sustainability, short and long-term goals. So when asked what I think FCC should look like in 15 to 20 years, I didn't really have any idea. But then we did a more 3 to 5 years. So that was more meaningful. We talked about the core values and board member continuity at the FCC delegate level is really important. They also covered new website for the FCC, and ultimately there will be new websites for each community council. They want to provide more tech support training, more leadership training. Again, discussed community council surveys. And as far as outreach, every delegate agreed that we need to see more people and younger people get involved in our community council and participate actively. So those are some of the things that we discussed. So I'll turn this over now for the March 16th portion of this effort, which was Leadership and Officer Summit, and that's community council. And Kathleen McCoy, our treasurer, attended that along with myself. And so Kathleen, if you want to go ahead and give a brief overview of what happened that next day, that would be great.
You bet. So it was March 17th, and Daryl Hess, the ombudsman, gave us a little bit of history of the community councils that I didn't really know. That we were launched in 75 when the borough and the city were united, and community councils, the Equal Rights Commission, and the Ombudsman Office were all created then. Anyway, he talked about what the role of the community councils are, and that we are not really a part of government, but we can influence government. And he talked a little bit about it. Some assembly members kind of are frustrated with community councils because they have 4 or 5 of them in their district, and it's hard to get around to see them all. And they had some ideas about maybe we could get community councils to have the same boundaries as our assembly districts. And Daryl said that's the wrong thinking, because community councils are based on neighborhoods, and neighborhoods are very unique. And that's the point, to have different neighborhoods feeding into advice to the assembly. Let's see, Christopher Constant was there, and he gave us a rundown on Robert's Rules of Order with the city clerk, Jamie Hines. And they essentially went through them, but also said, community councils are not professionals. We are not professionals, so we should keep it simple and keep it reasonable. And the third speaker was on ethics, so that we don't start taking a lot of gifts to get the things we want. And finally, the fourth speaker was Ariana, and she talked a little bit about strategic planning and gave us some tools if we wanted to sit down and think about, you know, strategic planning for our community council. So all in all, it was really cool. It was really fun to meet other community council members and hear them talk about what was going on with them. So it was fun. So that's my report.
Okay, that was a wonderful summary, and it was, both days were full days of lots of information. Yes, and I would tend to agree. The best part of that is getting to know and interact and share with other community council leaders in the Anchorage Bowl, as well as Eagle River, Chugiak, and Girdwood area. So many thanks. Okay, the next item on the agenda is just a kind of reminder. This is something we've been tracking and being involved with. It's the 10-year community council boundary proposed changes that I mentioned about that. And so the Planning and Zoning Commission had a public hearing on March 10th, and I testified at that. I don't have any date for when it may be going before the assembly. Just very briefly, we supported our boundaries remain the same. With the exceptions of one, we would like to go ahead and share the Spenard Beach Park area, which is now solely in our area, and have it overlap so that Spenard and Turnagain would share that. Planning and Zoning Commission did not support that. And then the other is the proposal to change in every council's coastal area to mean high tide versus low tide, which is what it is now. And we don't support that. And we, provided information about why we don't support it. And the Planning and Zoning Commission didn't see it our way either. There's, I think, 4 or 5 community councils that passed resolutions opposing that change. But the planning department said the mapping and so forth is very difficult. And so Planning and Zoning agreed to go along with the planning department's recommendation on that. So does anybody have any questions about that? If not, we will move on to
I have a question, Kathy.
oh, yes, John.
I believe that Kathleen just gave a report where the assembly said, yeah, we want to listen to you, but you guys kind of drive us crazy because sometimes there are more than one community council and we can't really listen to everybody. And so if the assembly and the Planning and Zoning Commission and the other guys aren't going to listen to us, what good is it?
Well, I think every time I spend hours at a meeting at the assembly chambers, I wonder the same thing.
And I've seen this multiple times when I, as an individual, have gone in to testify. Number one, they stick you can't go in and testify on a specific resolution or anything else like this. They dump you at the end. And then all the assembly members read their papers and stuff on the side, and nobody listens to you. So what the hell is this about? What's the assembly about? Or Planning and Zoning Commission, for cripe's sake, we're residents and we're not slaves out here.
Well, it's just an ongoing situation. It's always been that way where sometimes that you are able as a council to get the support of your elected representatives on the assembly or commission that are not elected, but they're appointed and they see it your way. And then other times, they tend to support the municipality's position, the staff, or, whatever it might be. So we've had some success over, a long period of time, but certainly there's been a lot of times where our advocacy is not effective. So Pat, go ahead.
Well, a few comments on that. They do listen to us, but we have to stay on top of it all the time. And it takes a whole bunch of people, not just one community council, or we should all be responding to their comments as well as the community council as a whole. The other is, having been one of the people who originated community councils, who participated in unification, who've worked on every comprehensive plan since the 60s. You have to stay involved, and you have to just keep at them. And we've had successes. I mean, road locations, school sites, undergrounding of utilities, all of that is the result of community council activity over the years. And it's not just community councils, but that's a way for people who are not used to going to the assembly to talk, to get their voice heard at their community council meeting. And that's where they can start. And I had several assemblymen tell me one time, all community councils are a training ground for future politicians. Well, maybe that's the case. However, where can you get the better groundwork than if you don't know what's been going on in your community and work your way up through the process? I don't consider it a training ground for future politicians, but I do think it's a place for people to learn about how their government works and to remind everyone, these people work for us. We hired them. They don't work for the government. The government works for us. And so we have to be there to help direct them. That's my comment. So hang in there,
agree.
John.
I agree, Pat, I agree with you 100%. They work for us.
We have to remind them of that constantly. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Pat. And Pat, thank you for being the one of the people that just really had the vision to start community councils and understand how effective and important they would be to represent neighborhoods. John. Oh, you're muted, John.
I want to agree with John Haxby. One of the trends that's coming up that we're seeing, and it's in our testimony, and we'll talk about it a bit more, is there's potentially a tendency to deal with plan updates and rezoning and things like this, and the only public process is going to be to testify before the Planning and Zoning Commission or the Assembly. And when you have 3 minutes as a citizen, 5 minutes as a community council, you testify, they look at you, they don't ask you questions, there's no chance for dialogue, they say, thank you very much, and they're going to then take their action. That's not particularly an engaging public process, and those are kind of things we're pointing out in our testimony.
You're 100% right, John. 100%. They don't pay attention to you and they say, yeah, thank you very much. Next.
We used to be able to be part, well, we probably should be. We should be part of the committees within planning department. We're the citizens when they start these plans.
Yep.
And we have been in the past. So we need to get back to that, and it takes us as citizens to force that action.
Yeah, definitely. That's when we've had success in the past, when council members and other members of the public are on stakeholder groups and working groups to develop plans and large other projects and efforts. But yeah, not so much anymore. But my new mantra is, by the time you get in front of a microphone and testify, it's too late to change anybody's mind.
You're
And even though we still do it because that's part of how it works, but that's our level of engagement that we won't want to stop ever. But yeah, Pat and John, that's spot on. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on quickly down to, speaking of an item coming before the assembly on next Tuesday, April 8th. It's, and it should, we just amended the agenda that I was wrong in the ordinance number. It's 2025-31, and it's the Town Square Solar Access Protection. And if you guys remember, those of you who are regulars, we discussed this at our December meeting, either December or January meeting, where we had a presentation with regard to in 85, there was an ordinance passed that protected solar access and view sheds south of Town Square Park. And then 2 years ago, an ordinance was passed that withdrew that protection, and efforts have been made for those active, have convinced the assembly to go ahead and have another agenda item, another ordinance, reversing that amendment that happened in 2023. And so we as a council just kind of stayed back because we didn't know what the timeline was going to be, et cetera. But more recent, those who are advocating this said, didn't feel like community councils really need to weigh in, just individually. If you care about Town Square Park and solar access, sun access, go ahead and show up or submit comments by tomorrow, or just call
What
in
what does it mean,
on
Pat? What does it mean?
April 8th, this coming Tuesday, April 8th.
What does this thing mean?
Well, it just means that development south of the Town Square Park, on the area's property south, that there's a height limit, just so that they aren't built so high that they block most of the sun that the park gets, either in winter or summer. And so for 40 years, we've enjoyed the Town Square Park and the amount of sun it gets. And then they passed something a couple years ago saying, if a developer wants to develop something on the south side, like Penny's parking garage property, that they could go much higher and it would create much more shadow. So now this ordinance goes back to the original intent to protect solar and view sheds. And so if anybody is interested in more information, let me know. But the public hearing in front of the assembly is next Tuesday. And I will be testifying in support of this ordinance, but not on behalf of the council, since the council hasn't taken a formal position on this. So does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. So I just wanted to provide an update, since we did get a presentation at our council a few months ago on this very issue. Okay, the next item is the Heritage Land Bank 2025 program and 5-year management plan update. We submitted comments, and the HLB Advisory Commission have had their public hearing on it, and it's going before the assembly on April 22nd. So I will testify on behalf of the council with regard to our comments. There are some Heritage Land Bank muni parcels within our boundaries. And so we've kind of been a broken record on our comments every year. They don't change. We just want to make sure that they're used, that's compatible with the areas they are in, especially the parcels that are municipal parcels west of the airport where the coastal trail runs through, as well as there's in West Anchorage, there's a handful of areas that need to be transferred to the municipality as part of the entitlement act that happened many, many years ago. And we continually request that gets some attention. It still hasn't, but we submit it every year. Does anybody have any questions on community council's position on the Heritage Land Bank land? Like I said, it hasn't changed in quite some time, but we go through this process every year. Okay, so report on the Lake Hood user group meeting, March 19th. I tried to access it via Teams, had a horrible time. They were having technical difficulties. It was a hybrid meeting. And in the end, I had missed a fair amount of it, and the audio was not good. The visuals weren't good. So I really can't provide a lot of information, but I did get, and this could easily be covered under airport report as well, but I'll just quickly go over when they talked about an update for the Anchorage Control Tower and replacement tie downs at Echo Parking. So for this year, they are looking at a construction contract award in late May or early June for the tower project. So there's ongoing work to secure and finalize leases for laying down staging areas. Environmental, the EA that was put out and we did submit extensive comments on was found of no significant impact. And it's at the Anchorage Library if you want to see their FONSI document. If a construction award contract is awarded in May or June, they would not expect significant construction activities until spring of 2026, though the contractor may propose to start earlier than that once they sign with the contract. And I know Lex, that welcome, and I know, this is information I'm sure you could share as well. But since I did attend this meeting or tried to, with regard to the relocation of Charlie Parking, General Aviation, wheeled parking, which is part of this. Currently, DOT has a completed design for the new apron, and they will begin procurement for construction after the funding of the tower is received. So right now, that project doesn't have any funding. Like the tower, construction activities are not expected until 2026. Environmental for this project is covered by the same environmental assessment as the tower. Again, no significant impact, even though we tried to make the case there actually would be some pretty significant impacts. And that was kind of the gist of what I got out of it. Again, I missed some of it. And does anybody have any questions with regard to that information? Okay. And actually, husband Dan is the TCC representative on that group, and I'm the alternate, but Dan was up on the slope. So I covered for that. I always attend them anyway, so that was fine. Okay.
Hey, Kathy. I don't
Yeah, let's go ahead.
I just so here, let me turn on my camera. So I did attend the Lake Hood user group meeting, and so we went over they went over all types of stuff that had to do with Lake Hood. They went over kind of new construction updates as well as leasing updates, and even wildlife updates. And so I think the biggest thing with leasing updates was the Lake Hood new developments. They talked about the TLC properties, Reeve Air Alaska, the K Lot, FAA Control Tower, and some of their proposed investments with Alaska aircraft sales and airplane hangars. And right now they're doing a non-aeronautical market value study. So doing a study of those parking spots, but that shouldn't impact any users. And then for the wildlife update Carrie Olson gave, they wanted to remind people who are in the Lake Hood area to secure all dumpsters at Lake Hood due to bears, and to trim vegetation for moose, as well as they are starting to notice that ducks are becoming a bigger problem on Lake Hood. So they might be using loud noises to deter some of the birds, ducks that are in the area. And so they said that from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. in April, you might hear some loud noises. And so if you're hearing loud noises, that's to deter some of the ducks, just because Lake Hood is an active airfield. And so we know that, birds and aviation doesn't mix well. And so it's more safe for us to do loud noises and get, make the birds, go away versus, risking any damages to planes or worse. Um, yeah, those were like the biggest things. They did talk about the FAA tower project. They had someone with the FAA say, and they said it was on track for construction in late May, early June. But that the construction wouldn't start likely until the spring of 2026. Yeah, I think that those are the biggest things that I took away from the meeting. I'm just looking back at my notes here that I took. But yeah, I think those are the biggest things. And then they're also still spreading awareness about staying off the ice and just spreading the word to make sure that people aren't wandering onto the ice. We've had like more activity out on the airfield. People have been wandering out on the ice. And even though it is melting, we just want to make sure people are being safe and not wandering out there. But yeah, those are kind of the biggest things that they talked about at the Lake Hood user group meeting the last month.
Okay, excellent. Do you know if there's minutes or, you know, a summary of what was discussed at that meeting that's accessible?
Yeah, I'm actually not sure, but I can get with Tim Coons, who headed that meeting, and see if I can track down, like, you know, if he recorded the meeting or if they took like extensive notes on it, and try to get that information to you.
Well, that would be great, just so we have something. But yeah, thank you for your much more thorough review than I provided since I was having technical issues. Not uncommon for me. So yeah. Okay, we're going to continue with the executive board report. Moving down, let's see where we at on the, we are a little past our agenda here. So quickly, West Acreage Candidates Forum, of course, we were a co-sponsor for that March 20th event. Thank you very, very much to Kathleen McCoy, who took the lead and did the majority of the organizing and was also the moderator at the event. I did get sign up sheets gathered up, and the count was 27, which I know at one point I did a head count and there was at least 30, and that wasn't counting candidates. So probably not everybody signed in. But it was a good event. And Kathleen, if you want to add anything briefly. So,
Only to say it was less exciting than the mayoral because many candidates didn't show up. We had all the school board candidates, but the two assembly candidates who were on the dais were not even running against each other. So it was an interesting thing, but it did allow people to ask questions. And so that was good. So I'm glad we did it.
yeah, I think it was a good exchange of information, and it was certainly a good way to get to know candidates better if we weren't familiar with who they were. So we've been a co-sponsor of this for quite some time, and hopefully we will continue to do so in the future. So thanks to everybody who participated, helped out, and again, thank you to Kathleen especially.
I just wanted to shout out to Sand Lake, to Taku Campbell, and to Spinard, because they all participated in, and we hadn't really heard from Taku Campbell for a long time. So it was kind of nice to get connected with them on this.
Yes, yes, that was excellent to have Taku Campbell involved, and I hope that their council will be more active in the future on that. Yep, good idea. Okay. Okay, so let's see, moving on quickly, received notice that the AMATS policy, that's not the one I want, AMATS 2025 AMATS public participation plan is now out for review, and comments are due on May 16th. And I don't know much else about it. I haven't gone to a link and tried to look at anything. Is anybody else familiar with the AMATS public participation plan? Usually we just weigh in on when they do a 2040 plan or a 2050 plan with projects, but this must outline how they get people to get involved at the level of when they're actually working on plans. So board will take a look at this and see if we want to put something on our May agenda, any kind of input on it. How does that sound?
Probably like the assembly listening to public comments and the planning and zoning commission listening to public comments. I'm just guessing.
I don't know. Pat, yeah, you have your hand raised. Maybe you don't have your hand raised.
Hi,
Okay,
Kathy. It
sorry.
was me, Karen. I'm sorry to.
Oh, sorry, Karen.
Like,
Boxes
it
are
might have
jumping
been.
around on me. I apologize. Karen, go ahead.
I I would think we might be interested, especially if the um, assembly is moving to have the planning and zoning commission just take, I don't know, almost unilateral action on changing zoning rules without a formal public process. Maybe that's the opportunity to request a more formal public process where they do more than just take a couple minutes of public testimony and move on their action. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, usually they have a fairly standard public process. But I haven't taken a look at this plan, so I couldn't speak to it. But okay, and then the other thing that we added to the executive board report, and I apologize especially to Kathleen, our treasurer, is quarterly treasurer's report. So Kathleen, with no further ado, can you provide what our treasury looks like right now? Kathleen? Oh, you need to unmute.
Okay. Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I actually wrote up a little document, and then since it wasn't on the agenda, I just kind of left it on my computer. But we have like $160.05 in our checking account, and we have, I think, 1,600 roughly in our savings. And I did notice that we're losing $5 a month in our checking account. It just goes away every month. I called the bank and asked them, are we required to have the checking account? We are not. So if we decided not to just lose $5 a month, we could close that and just keep the savings account, which would mean we'd have to go down to the bank to get a cashier's check whenever we pay somebody, but we don't pay too many people. So it probably wouldn't be that hard. So that's my report.
Okay, well, thanks, Kathleen. So did they say anything about as long as you do a transaction every so often that they won't charge that monthly fee? Because that's what I remember them telling
Well, I can tell
us
you
a few years
that
ago.
the month that I looked at when I got reports, we had made one transaction and we were still billed the $5.
Okay, so
So
it might be like, if you make 5 a year, or 10 a year, or something like
Yeah.
that.
Actually, I'll add something there. Usually if you, excuse me for interjecting, but usually if you go in, I think you can do an automatic transfer from checking to savings and automatic transfer from savings back to checking. And I believe they will waive the $5 fee. And it's like $25 or something minimum or $50 minimum. So you can just transfer it back and forth. If it happens once a month, they waive the fees.
We'll have to look into that a little bit more just to see what we want to decide to do with that.
And you can
Okay.
set them up as automated transfers. Once you put them in place, you don't have to fool with them again ever.
Okay, thanks, John.
Yep.
Okay, so that is the end of our executive board report, and unless any board member has anything else to add. Okay, if not, we'll move on to reports. And as I've said, every month we put mayor's report on there, not that we expect the mayor or any mayor's staff to attend unless we actually invite them. But they have committed to attending each council a couple times a year. So I'm sure we'll be notified when somebody actually would like to be on the agenda, but we'll just keep it there. I do not see Anna or Cameron to provide a assembly report. So they must have something else going on this evening. Let's see. Let me get this thing off my screen there. Okay, so we'll move on to legislative report, and there we did receive written reports from both Senator Matt Clayman and Representative Carolyn Hall, and they were sent out with our agenda. And I don't see either one of them joining us this evening, and typically they do. There's probably a fair amount of stuff going on down in Juneau right now. So just make sure you read their reports that was sent out with the agenda, or if you need one, I'll be happy to send one to you. And hope they're doing well in Juneau. I know they've got a lot of things to consider right now. So wish them the best of luck. So school board report. Is there anybody from the school board? Oh, Tracy, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to let folks know there is a legislative town hall on Saturday from 2 to 4 at Cuddy Hall at UAA. And I know Carolyn Hall's going to be there. I think Elise Galvin, a whole bunch of folks. So if you're interested and want to know what's going on and speak your mind, definitely show up.
Okay. Oh, thanks for sharing that. I think I did see that somewhere, but yeah, and went in Carolyn's report. So yes. And then she put, if you are unable to attend, you can share written testimony. So
They've been really fast about, I've had a whole bunch of questions on different bills moving and they've just gotten back to me snip snap. So yeah, highly recommend if you're not on their newsletters, get on those. There's a ton going on. So I don't know if I've just not been paying attention in the past, but there's just a lot going on.
well, I know they always seem to be pretty busy. And then especially the second half where, do we really, when it gets gone through committees and it goes before, the full bodies, then there's a lot of, discussions and public hearings and so forth. So, yeah, if you've got anything specific you want to talk with them about, be sure and contact them contact Spain with our assembly representatives. So thanks for sharing that with us. And then airport report. So we kind of got coverage on the Lake Hood side of things already from Lex. So thanks so much. So, but I'll let you have the floor again to see what else you would like to share.
Hi, Kathy. This is Terry
And
Linseth.
hi, Terry. Hi,
Hi.
Terry. Welcome.
Yep.
Whoever
Thank you.
wants to jump in.
Yeah, Lex and I are kind of tag teaming. This is probably my last time kind of filling in, and then next time Lex will be doing the full report. So thank you to Lex for answering some of your questions earlier on too. So I'll just go over quickly our update that Lex sent out to the councils and that she pulled together for April. As folks know, Mount Spur, there's a lot of conversations and preparedness happening. The airport is very prepared and ready to take action if and when it does have some activity. In our update, we do provide some links to informational websites that folks may find useful if you just want to study up on that and how to become more prepared. We do have a new concession that will be opening up in Concourse B. It's Denali Spirits, replacing the Humpies restaurant there. And so we're excited to see that new venue this summer and kind of keeping all of our concessions, fresh and upbeat. So we're excited to welcome them. There is one land lease that's in the Sand Lake Community Council that we noted here that is on Raspberry Road within 500 feet of the airport boundary. And it's the Chugach Electric had put in a lease application for an electrical substation there. And that is currently still out for public review and comment. We do have an honor flight flying out on April 22nd and coming back in April 26th. We're doing a big celebration and welcoming home of those 22 veterans that are flying out to Washington, D.C. And we invite folks to the terminal to help us celebrate their homecoming. They're flying in at 2:45 on April 26th. And more details are in the handout if you'd like to come and attend and welcome them home. It's always a really great thing. We're just reminding folks to avoid the departure curb when you're dropping off passengers. And as summer traffic starts to pick up a little bit, we all know that the curbside can get really crowded. So we encourage folks to utilize the cell phone lot as your loved ones and friends and family begin to start visiting. And then just a reminder that Lake Hood is an active airfield. We do see sometimes footprints on the ice on the lake, and we know that people are out there, and it's just it's not a safe environment, and planes are still taking off and landing, and we just ask people to be cognizant of that, to stay off the ice. And as always, we have the Gov Delivery website that we ask people to sign up if they want to have continual updates when we have land leases that are out for public review, or anything that the airport is ready to announce, like public meetings. All that will be posted on Gov Delivery. So if you sign up for that, you'll be getting those emails from the airport with regards to Lake Hood and Ted Stevens. And then lastly, it's not on the report, but I just wanted to say that we are kicking off the Part 150 noise study. And for folks that aren't super familiar with that, we did one back, I think in 2016 is when it was last updated. And it's essentially a 2-year planning project that is consultant-led and federally funded. It is a volunteer program, but it's a project that the airport does to take an assessment of noise of aircraft in the air around Lake Hood and Ted Stevens. And then try to determine the noise levels and then come up with some mitigation options on how to help reduce the noise or be less impactful to the neighboring communities. So we will be formulating a committee, and Turnagain Community Council will be invited to participate, as they always are in all of our planning projects. And so you should be seeing that notice coming your way probably here in the next couple of weeks as we start to get that project kicked off. And with that, that is all we have.
Okay. Does anybody have, John, go ahead.
Make sure I'm unmuted here. Thanks, Terry. Good to see you. I had 4 questions. Are we getting close to sort of the finalization and publication of the master plan update?
We are getting pretty close. I would say it's almost mostly there. What we're doing is a final submittal of our airport land use plan to the to the FAA, which has to review and sign off on that. The chapters are still in draft form, but they're getting pretty close. So anyways, long story short, I do anticipate it being released early summer.
Okay, great. So I guess the second question is, any update on the Atlas Air Park lease?
I'm sorry, on the Atlas Air Park lease?
Yeah, the Atlas Air Park lease, the one that's kind of towards the south end of
Yeah.
the road heading out to Detox and Salvation Army and the tank farm.
Yeah, you betcha. My apologies. My adorable second grader was making a little bit of noise in the background. We continue with lease negotiations. I would say that we haven't gotten any further than the last time that we spoke at your community council meeting. They're continuing to refine their design. And so we're not exactly finalized on the footprint of what that would look like. They have until July, I believe it's July 14th, but I would have to double check on that date, to sign the lease within the Title 17 rules and regulations. When a lease is public noticed for review and or competition, once that 30-day review is complete, the tenant has up to a year to sign the lease. And so that's where we get the July 14th date. If they don't have the lease signed by then that land is essentially up for grabs again, and they would have to either reapply or just not apply again. And so the clock is definitely ticking on them to get that lease signed.
Okay. And I'm assuming once that lease, if it is signed, we can perhaps take a look at what they have in the way and have in mind in the way of design.
Yes, absolutely. As I understand it, Alice is going to want to begin construction as soon as possible, which they're going to still have a little bit of a lead time ahead of them with, getting their design finalized, getting it submitted to the airport for review. It's going to be having to relocate Point Warrensoff Road, which we know that is pretty significant effort there in and of itself. So we're going to have some good review and, public notice process, whatever that looks like. We'll make sure that we follow the rules and regulations on that as well. And then they're environmental. So they still have a ways to go before we would even see construction happening on that site.
Okay, good. The third one I sort of mentioned before you got on is that, we had received notice the taxiway Z construction, and it looked like there might be quite a bit of fill disposal on the north side of the east-west runway between the tank farm and potentially where the detox facility was. And
Mhm.
kind of assuming that means there could be a lot of truck traffic out there this summer. Will there be road closures, or is it just kind of a matter of keeping an eye out for truck traffic?
That is a great question, John, and let me go back and figure out how that, what the route is to get over there. I don't know if they're gonna be using Point Warrenzoff Drive or
Okay.
if they're gonna be using the tug road on the airport that wraps around, the end of the parallels on the west side.
Yep.
So let me have an IOU for that one.
That
And
would be great.
and you do remind me of one thing I wanted to mention as well, and that is that we were hoping to have our 2025 summer construction mapping and narrative ready for you at this meeting, because I know we usually present that at our April meetings. It's almost done. If we had just one more week, we would have been able to present it to you. But once it is finalized, Alex is going to send an email out to the community councils, letting them know that it's online for your review. And then we're always happy to do a quick presentation of that at your May meeting.
Great, thanks. And then the last thing, anything, I know when the West Air Park proposal, there was talk about a public meeting coming up on that, where there may be again some road relocation, and there's the Ford hard stands they want to build out there.
I will have to do an IOU on that as well with regards to public process. I'm not aware of any meeting that's coming up
Okay, great,
for
thanks.
that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Darren. You guys have a lot of things on your plate, a lot of projects to juggle and lots of
Yeah.
stuff going on, and hopefully summer tourism planes are gonna be flocking in like birds. Okay, Pat has her hand up and then Steve Montes.
I just have a positive comment. I wanted to say that the parking area at the end of Postmark Drive, I don't know what the Postmark Drive lookout is the smoothest I've ever seen it. And I would like that to continue when the rains start. Who's ever been working on it, I thank you very much because it receives a tremendous amount of traffic. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Pat. I will share that. That's actually our airfield maintenance team that maintains that, and they'll be happy to hear that.
Steve Montes, go ahead.
You're on mute, Steve.
Oh, yep, you're muted. Steve, you're muted, so if you can unmute yourself.
I was
There you
wondering,
go.
you were talking about the footprint of Atlas. I wanted to know if you could tell me the suggested or planned size of that lot, maybe in acreage.
Yeah, you bet, sir. It's a 67 acres.
67 acres, thanks.
It's a 67-acre proposed lot for a 55-year land lease. It would be including warehousing facility, and I think the last count I'd seen was up to 8 hard stands, but it might have been a little bit more. But they're currently trying to define exactly what their infrastructure support's going to look like there.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
That will be large and impactful for sure. Okay, any other questions for Terry or Lex? Thank you both for attending. We really appreciate updates. And just because I'm having still some major difficulties with the TCC president at yahoo.com email, if anybody's emailing me for anything, but including the airport, send it also to Kathy.Gleason, tcc@yahoo.com, and hope to get that resolved sooner rather than later, but we'll see. Okay, let's see. Next on our agenda is old and new business. So let's see, is Ari here yet with us? Oh, there you are. Hi, Ari.
Hi,
Um,
everyone.
You have the floor for this agenda item.
Amazing. Let me just make sure I have all of my little ducks in a row. I am bearing some fun news, and you guys may be aware that the Federation, in partnership with the community councils, oh, sorry, my connection's a little rough. The Federation, in partnership with the community councils, has started the process, or has started this new campaign to recognize members of the year from every community council. And so this year's member of the year, and if I can take a moment to share screen, is going to be John Isaacs, which we're really excited. Yay! You're the first member of
Yay!
this is the first presentation I've done. And I did just want to share a little bit about what Turnagain Community Council kindly wrote. And of course, my computer is taking such a long time to do this. Let's see if I can't get it.
He deserves every bit of it.
He does.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So in appreciation of your commitment and invaluable contributions to Turnagain Community Council, we present you with the award for the 2025 Volunteer or Member of the Year Award. Oh, so sorry. For Turnagain Community Council. This award was created and is presented on behalf of the Federation of Community Councils and the Turnagain Community Council. John has served as an active board member since being elected to this position in 2024 and was re-elected in 2025. John has also served as co-chair of TCC's Land Use Committee since the inception of this important standing committee several years ago. On behalf of Turnagain Community Council Board, TCC Land Use Committee, and the full council membership, John has worked on numerous important proposals, projects, and issues at both the state, airport, and municipal level that could affect the Turnagain neighborhood and other areas within council boundaries. He has also participated in collaboration efforts when TCC has identified broader commonalities within other community councils. John's dedication and involvement has served Turnagain Community Council well, and recognition of his effort is well deserved. Turnagain Community Council passed a motion approving the nomination on March 6, 2025 at the general membership meeting. A little bit about this award. The Member of the Year Award was created as part of the Global Volunteer Month, which honors the millions of individuals who volunteer throughout the year and change the world, one act of kindness at a time. Volunteers are a critical part of civic engagement. They are role models that not only have a positive impact on their communities and organizations they serve, but also inspire others to look within themselves and shine their own light. Global Volunteer Month provides the opportunity to celebrate the impacts that people have when they use their civic power to support causes that they care about. Your dedication, John, inspires others that they can create a brighter, more connected world. We want to thank you for your contribution and your service to Turnagain Community Council and the municipality of Anchorage. So just another round of applause for John. Yay!
Here, here.
I have a lovely, little nice certificate that we'll give you at a later date. But yep, that's my little bit. Thank you guys so much for participating, and this will be an annual thing, so we look forward to celebrating all of your contributions in the future. You guys are the backbone of civic engagement in our community, and you guys are all volunteers, and it's really important that we recognize the hard work that you put in every day. So thank you guys so much. Kathy, thank you for the time. And John, congratulations. You do amazing work.
Well,
Well,
I'm
thank
honored,
you.
to receive
Yes.
this nomination from everybody. And I'll probably take you up, Ari, as a chance to come by, pick up the certificate, and then bend your ear about how
Please.
community councils may work together to coordinate in the upcoming comprehensive plan update.
Oh yes, comprehensive plan. It is coming.
It is. Yeah.
Well, and also the board had thought it would be good to have at least, some kind of photo op with you and physically with your certificate. So, we'll arrange a time to go to FCC and see if we can pull that off so that can be posted on our website and
Yeah.
Perfect. It's very sweet.
Yeah, well, you know, the interesting thing, this is for year 2025 and it's only early April. So just think how much more John is gonna do
Yes.
to have earned that award by
Yeah,
December
this is
31st.
incentive for everything that's coming down the road.
Yes,
You're a
exactly.
regular Sherlock Holmes.
Anita Watson. Maybe Kathy's my Watson. I don't know. We'll see.
Aw.
Yeah, I think that probably could describe us fairly well. Well,
Amazing.
thank you again, Ari, for providing this award and the opportunity to recognize someone. And thank you, John, for everything that you do.
Aw.
It's a long list. So as active as we are, and try to be, it's you know, it's a group effort, but John certainly deserves a lot of kudos for encouraging us and allowing us to participate at the level we do. So many thanks. Okay, we'll move
Thank
on
you.
to, again, thank you. We will move on to the Lois Drive reconstruction, April 23rd, open house. So we have Lucy, and I think I saw you are here. Hi, Lucy. Welcome.
Hi. Hi,
So I'll
everyone.
let you
Yeah,
introduce yourself and our CRW person, which I think I got wrong on our agenda. So I apologize for that.
that's totally fine. I just want to say thank you very much for letting us present tonight on such short notice. Again, my name is Lucy Whitlinger. I am a landscape architect and a public involvement specialist with a little firm in downtown called Huddle. And I'm here tonight with Rob Burdick. He is our project manager and engineer with CRW. We are here just to present to you. Can I do a share screen by any chance?
Yes, absolutely. Go
Okay,
ahead and
great.
feel
I'm
free
going to
to
go
do that.
ahead and share my screen. And this is a project fact sheet, and we're talking about the Lois Drive reconstruction. This isn't necessarily in your community council, but it's definitely adjacent to. So we wanted to come to you tonight to invite you to a public open house that is happening this month, Wednesday, April 23rd from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at Aquarian Charter School. And we are going to be presenting about the Lois Drive reconstruction. And so this is an ongoing project that is going to see improvements for potential new road foundation, asphalt, storm drain systems, non-motorized transportation, traffic calming, and other street lighting improvements and the such. And so we're just really excited that this project is moving along. If you're not familiar where Lois Drive is, it is a street that connects from West Benson Boulevard down to West 32nd Avenue. You can see Aquarian Charter School is here. This is Minnesota Drive over here. And so it's a really important connector for the community from Benson into Spenard and also for Aquarian Charter School. So I'm going to also share this. Can everyone see this? This here, this is a postcard mailer that was sent out to a select area of individuals around the project site. And so this is just announcing the open house. Again, it's on April 23rd from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at Aquarian Charter School. And we're encouraging the community to come and review the 65% design. And provide comments and meet with the project team members to learn more about the improvements that are being proposed. If you're not able to attend, everything will be posted on the website. It is www.loisdrivereconstruction.com. You can see it here at the bottom of the mailer. And I believe both the fact sheet and the postcard mailer were sent out in your with your announcements. Is that right, Kathy?
Yes, they were.
Okay, great. So again, we just wanted to announce this open house and tell you to come and check it out and learn more about this road project that's being proposed. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Okay, thank you, Lucille, and thank you, Rob, for attending as well. I see
yeah.
Pat Redmond has her hand up.
I'm talking too much tonight. A comment though, I've had the privilege, I think, of for the last year to have a person as one of my caretakers who's new to Alaska and is anxious. And one of the things I've been able to explain to her, or have had to explain to her, is the difference between the borough before unification and the city. And Lois Drive is a perfect example of a borough road. And because the boundary was Northern Lights, and it's nice to see it being improved. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that comment, Pat. We appreciate that. And then John, did you have a comment?
I guess a couple questions. I know there's sort of a new Greenways initiative that's going on, and I don't know if this is considered part of the Greenways initiative or not.
That is a good question. I know that the Greenways does have a website. I was actually just looking at it the other day because I'm a resident of Fairview, and they are proposing one of the Greenways to connect from Chester Creek to Ship Creek along, I believe, Carluck. I don't know if this is on that list, but I think if you were to do a quick Google search on Anchorage Greenways, I know that there is a website and a map. Otherwise, Brad Coy with MOA or Donovan Camp with MOA Traffic, they're the two individuals that are working on that project, and they would have more information for you.
Okay.
But otherwise, Rob, I'm not sure. Rob, do you know if it's part of the Greenways project, or if it's
not that I've heard of. Yeah, I haven't heard that it's part of that project.
Okay.
The second question is, could you quickly say what the concepts are for non-motorized and pedestrian facilities and traffic calming?
Yeah, I can answer that question.
Yeah, I'll kick that over to Rob.
So on one side of the roadway, the east side, there'll be a 10-foot pathway, and on the west side of the road, there'll be a 6-foot sidewalk. Each will be separated from the roadway by a 5-foot grass buffer. And then for traffic calming, we'll have speed feedback signs that will tell you your speed, and will be flashing at you if you're going over the speed limit. Also, we reduce the curb return radius coming off Benson to reduce speeds.
Great, thanks.
Okay, is there anybody else that has any questions on this project? Okay, I guess I have an observation. My husband and I drove this road. It was last summer or fall. It wasn't during the winter. And because I knew about this project, and there's a massive amount of vegetation. And does it cross where Fish Creek is? Fish Creek, does it run through that area? I don't remember, but I know there's a massive amount of vegetation, and plus it looked like the property lots may, I mean, you can tell me, are you having to do any right-of-way take with regard to easements, or, to be able to construct a road to this level of development? Have you had a lot of dialogue with the neighbors living up and down Lois?
The only permanent easements we're going to require is one for a fire hydrant that we're moving out of near someone's driveway, and that was a AWU requirement. And the other permanent easement will be for a drainage catch basin, but there's 65 foot of right of way, which is typically more than we're usually available. So there's not much permanent easements. Most of it is just temporary easements for construction activity.
Okay, and does Fish Creek cross under there? I'm not sure. Or if it was some other kind of just maybe drainage ditch that just looked like maybe it was a side creek or something.
Yeah, I think the storm drain eventually outfalls into Fish Creek, but there is no Fish Creek crossing within the project.
That explains that. It just reminded me of Turnagain Street, where Turnagain Community Council has tried to advocate for an upgrade with curb and gutter and drainage and just a sidewalk on one side, but the right of ways are so narrow. In fact, probably about, half of a 65 foot. So it's interesting to know that Lois Drive, you're not running into that kind of a conflict for the
Yeah,
project.
fortunately, yeah, we're usually at the max is 60 feet that we usually have, but yeah, we're lucky to have 65 feet. So that's why we're able to get a 10-foot pathway and a 6-foot sidewalk in with 5-foot buffer separations from each. So it's nice that we have that.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay, thank you so much for contacting us. Yes, this is in Spenard, but it's right on our backyard, so to speak. And so there might be a fair amount of Turnagain residents that use this road because it is a good thoroughfare from one spot to the other.
Yeah, we're excited to present. So please encourage your members to attend. Otherwise, our contacts are on the website and your members can reach out to us anytime with comments or questions, concerns, or anything like that.
Okay, thank you so much again, Rob and Lucy.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for letting us
You're
attend tonight.
welcome
You
to
have a nice
stay
evening.
the rest of the meeting if you have nothing better to do.
My dog, this is my 4th meeting this evening, so my dog is ready to go for a walk. So I
Okay.
will bid you all adieu and say thank you very much.
Okay, good
All
enough.
right. Goodbye.
Bye. Okay, we'll move on to our next old and new business item, and that's House Bill 136, which is sponsored by Representative Chuck Kopp. And I believe you have joined us, which I really appreciate, because I'm sure it's busy down in Juneau, on an act relating to use of railroad easements. So thank you for joining us, and I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. I really appreciate the Turnagain Community Council, the invite. I just jumped off from one of my community councils in South Anchorage, discussing a similar subject. So yes, many of you live along the railroad and are impacted by how the easement across private property is managed. What House Bill 136 does is it reaffirms that private landowners have the right to reasonable use of their land, even when the Alaska Railroad easement crosses it. It clarifies essentially that the railroad cannot exclude landowners from their own property unless the use would unreasonably interfere with rail operations. In other words, the easement crosses private property. It is a railroad purpose easement, but if the underlying landowner has a non-interfering use like lawns or gardens or rose bushes. I have over 100 homes in South Anchorage that this would apply to, that the railroad can't exclude them unless there's an interference. So why is this needed? The Ninth Circuit 2023 ruling in Flying Crown versus Alaska Railroad. This was Homeowners Association in Ocean View. It held that the railroad had an exclusive use easement across Flying Crown's property. So the Ninth Circuit acknowledged that the railroad did not own the easement, but it owned the property, but they had an easement across private property, but it did not define the limits of that exclusivity. So the issue is that for many years, the railroad has acted in a manner as if it possesses the right-of-way in fee simple ownership, even where it crosses private land that it has never owned. And when the Alaska Railroad Transfer Act passed Congress and the railroad went from federal to state ownership in 1982, December 1982, January 1983, at that time, the United States Railway Association acknowledged that 142 miles of track the railroad did not own or control the corridor because that land had already been patented into private hands. So they said, you have an easement across those lands. In other words, yes, you can run your railroad, but you don't own the land, and we can't assign it any monetary value, because one of the questions was, how much was the state going to pay for the railroad? As many of you know, at first it was $450 million was the federal government's assessment. And then after they appraised it, they came back and we settled at $22 million. So pretty much pennies on the dollars, because more than half of the right-of-way had been patented away into ownership by private individuals. And at that point, the right-of-way had become an easement. That's the difference. A right-of-way is public access across public lands for the railroad. When we were a territory, it was the federal government issuing permission itself to cross to Alaska. But once that right-of-way was patented into private hands, it became an easement across other people's land. So this bill, consistent with that, is coming into play to protect landowners in cases where the railroad easement crosses their land, so they're not charged fees for crossing their own land, blocking utility access and road projects, unnecessarily charging the state and the municipality millions of dollars in crossing fees and requiring them to maintain them, and HOAs excessive fees, and suing property owners and restricting land use without cause. And I've had, in the 10 years I've been in and out of public office, I've had scores of these situations from Fairbanks to Seward that highlight this need. And we had a good bill hearing earlier this week, Tuesday, rolling this out. This bill, interestingly, it doesn't contradict the Ninth Circuit's ruling that the railroad has exclusive use of their easement. What it does is it asserts the state's authority that, notwithstanding the Ninth Circuit, a federal court, it's a state right-of-way. And the state can manage a state right-of-way however it chooses. The Department of Law and the legislature both agree with me that this is a management policy and that the state has every right to tell the railroad, this is how we want you to manage the right-of-way when you are crossing private land. And essentially in a non-exclusive manner where you only will eject the landowner if there's an interfering use, but not just because you can. So it restores the traditional definition of an easement, which is a non-possessory right to use land for a specific purpose. In this case, that's for rail, telegraph, and telephone. And the reason why we understand that definition is because everybody in Anchorage who lives along the right-of-way is either a homestead land patent holder or a successor in interest to that. And that was the interest that was reserved in the patent. And that's what homes for 50, 60, 70 years along the right-of-way have always understood, is there's an easement there for rail, telegraph, and telephone. But other than that, as long as I'm not messing with that easement, I can have my lawn or my garden. So it is consistent with Supreme Court precedent in the last 100 years. And it is about private property rights. More than 140 miles of track crosses these homestead patented privately owned lands. And I certainly believe the state should not let a public corporation impose a fee simple style ownership over private citizens. It's about limited government, due process, and protecting Alaskans' rights to use their land. Some people have asked me, is this about the Fish Creek Trail extension? It is not. That situation involves a public access project across the railroad easement and has its own unique circumstances. This is narrowly talking about the individual property interest of landowners on their piece of land along the railroad, not about a public access project in the right-of-way. It's specifically about protecting property owners, not setting policies about public land use. So just to wrap it up, it's a simple but important correction. It draws a fair line that protects both the railroad's operational interests and your rights as property owners in the right-of-way. And I am committed, have been for a long time, to making sure the railroad works with landowners and not against them. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Representative Kopp on presentation? I don't see any hands raised. Oh, Kathleen, go ahead.
I'm just curious about how has the railroad responded to that?
So yeah, they were there. Bill O'Leary and Megan Clements were there at the meeting. And they, of course, liked how the Ninth Circuit ruled. They said, well, the Ninth Circuit said we have an exclusive use. But then again, we just come back to, yes, but they did not define that. And the railroad acknowledges the Ninth Circuit said that they have an easement over other people's land. In that case of Flying Crown, they acknowledged that the railroad easement is permission to cross other people's property, and that the robust discussion is what is the nature of that exclusivity. if you can absolutely exclude the landowner, then basically you have fee simple ownership of the land. So it's kind of irreconcilable to have both an easement but claim a fee interest in the land. You either have permission to cross someone else's land or you own the land. So it's a good question, and the Ninth Circuit really didn't answer it. They just went along with the railroad's argument that we can exclude for any reason, even a non-interference one. But the court didn't really reason that through in a way that any nuance could be taken from it. That would be, follow a common sense logic of what is a common law easement and how do we apply that. And every railroad since 1865 in America that was built, that's when Congress said we're not doing land grant railroads anymore. They're all simple easement railroads, and that's just been our view. So, but rather than relitigate it, we're just going with a management policy saying manage it as if it was non-exclusive when you're crossing private property. If you're crossing lands where you did own the ground outright, then yes, it can be absolutely, if you own it in fee simple, then you can't exclude anybody for any reason. But if you're crossing private land that somebody else has the title to, you may not eject the landowner. And also the other thing it does is it ejects the courts, because then any dispute is settled in the railroad boardroom and not in the courts. And it completely minimizes use of the land. So this bill is about getting at the right balance and making sure that people are fairly protected and actually can do their gardening activities just like they have been for more than half a century. Or in Flying Crown case, they had a small portion of their taxiway that encroached just a couple feet into the right of way, and the railroad had threatened to fence off about 8 homes that had their airplanes parked in front of their house for, since that airfield started in 1952, and it was pretty dramatic. And so the question came, well, this is our land and you have an easement to cross it, and the court did agree with Flying Crown on that part. So because the easement is exclusive use according to the Ninth Circuit, this policy says the state can manage it as if it was non-exclusive to the underlying landowner.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions on this? John?
Kathy? Yeah, just, I don't want to open this up for a large discussion, but I think this hits on one of the questions that we want to get into when we have the land use committee meeting. And that is that the property rights are not as simple as some people might think. And it's kind of important to delve into them. And I think, Chuck, you've mentioned the fact that you have an easement of a right-of-way, which is a surface feature, which, depending on how you look at it, may or may not be exclusive. And I think, what you're trying to do with this bill is that it's not exclusive to the railroad. What the railroad says they can do in that right-of-way is one issue. And then you have, what is the property underlying that right-of-way of easement, both surface and subsurface? And you've also alluded in some places that the railroad may own the property underneath and it may not. And so, this is really, I think, important to have this discussion when we have the land use committee meeting to look at the property lines and make sure we have a clear understanding.
Yes, thank you. So all of your lands in Turnagain Community Council, that is all homestead patent land. The railroad never owned that land. That all it all went out of federal possession into private hands. And so you're sitting on one massive homestead patent after the next through your area. Yes, it was subdivided up, and now there's a number of successors in interest. But the railroad only had a fee simple interest where there was either federal lands, parks, territories. When we were a territory, remember all the way up until 59, when a lot of the patents had been issued, there were places where the federal government possessed that interest when they were a federal railroad. But once we issued over 1,200 homestead patents between Seward and Fairbanks, 142 miles of track were covered. So in other words, the easement just crossed these patents, but the underlying landowner owned the entire piece of property. And so outside of Turnagain, when you get north of your area, we're dealing with situations where people can be denied access to their same lot. They own, maybe 50, 60 acres on both sides of the track, or they're allowed to cross if they pay $1,500 a year, things like that. But they built the crossing, they maintain it. And So there's a number of issues, but this wouldn't apply to any area of land that the railroad did own outright originally. It only would apply to areas such as the Anchorage Bowl, Palmer, Wasilla. Basically, the town sites that all grew up in Alaska along the track were all originally homestead patent lands.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else? So we'll move on to our next agenda item. Oh, Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Representative Kopp, thanks for coming in to talk with Turnagain Community Council. I read some of the letters that were in support of HB 136 and speaking and talking generally about what the area that you're talking about in Turnagain. I guess my question is, with John Haxby and McCary, do they have documents proving that they had or that they have ownership for those underlying homestead properties? Because with everything that I've read up to this point, including the letter that was sent from Ava Gardner to McCary and to Haxby, kind of indicated that those didn't exist. Do you know if those documents they have, or are those things that exist and are specific to the Fish Creek Trail?
So again, this bill is not about Fish Creek, and that's a great question for Mr. Haxby. I have seen several homestead patents in your area that do go on both sides of the track. So yeah, I do know with certainty that entire Fish Creek area is going across homestead patent lands, to answer your question. But I'm sure those individuals would meet with you directly and show you those documents. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate you guys. Yeah.
Okay, wow, yeah,
Yeah.
interesting, since it does, we've got this big project that's moving forward, but we want clarification on, just what's what with some of this stuff so that we can move on appropriately. So we appreciate your input on that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, again, thank you so much. Continue good work down in Juneau, and
Kathy. Yeah.
we look forward to seeing the results of all of that effort down there at the end of the session.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Okay. Okay, we will move on to our next old and new business item, which is ratification consideration of a Turnagain Community Council Land Use Co-Chair's comment on AO 2025-40, amending Title 21 to create 2 new zoning processes. So the reason why it's a ratification consideration is we're obviously not meeting until this evening, but the comments needed to be submitted earlier today. And John, I assume you did that.
Yep.
And so we just need to ratify those comments, and the public hearing for this is next Tuesday in front of the Assembly, April 8th. So John, go ahead and if you want to talk to this.
Yeah, let me provide some background. I think I had added a couple things to the comments that were shared, but then I'm assuming we'll need a motion to ratify the comment and a second. But
Okay.
And I don't know if we need the motion first to discuss it, or I should discuss it first. I'm a little rusty. on that.
Well, why don't you take a little bit of time to just kind of,
Okay.
provide the overview, and then we can certainly take a motion as we want to discuss it.
Okay, so this is an ordinance that creates 2 new rezoning processes. One, which is to sort of streamline rezoning for some small private parcels and reduce the time involved. But the bigger piece that is of more importance is in the 2040 land use plan, and I think also in the comprehensive plan, they both envisioned as implementation action items that the administration, which can be defined as the Assembly, the Planning Commission, or the Planning Department, can initiate some forms of rezoning to implement the comprehensive plan and the land use plan. And these have been described as large area rezones and zoning overlays, which will potentially put some additional conditions or allow different things over existing zoning districts. And so we heard in various debates about housing and zoning in the past couple of years that the Assembly was interested in formalizing this right of theirs and other aspects of the administration to institute some rezonings. And there had been some frustration that they had assumed that the planning department was going to do this. The planning department never did. And so they have come up with this, this ordinance to do so. This ordinance does a couple things in terms of public process. And when you look at the 2040 land use plan, I think it was approved in 2017. A lot of the deliberations occurred, a couple years before that. So probably most people, maybe with the exception of Kathy, who has a photographic memory, does not
Not
remember
anymore.
all the things that went into implementation. But they cited, I think, something like about 11 different aspects of the 2040 land use plan where it was given to the planning department to institute rezoning. I looked at that, and there were probably like about another 8 of them. Much of had to do with the airport lands, which would allow them to implement rezoning, which they didn't mention in this. And so the big problem becomes the public process. Kind of as we discussed earlier, this would primarily be done through a public hearing testimony process before the Planning and Zoning Commission or the Assembly. And in some cases, the Assembly has waived hearings with the Planning and Zoning Commission and taken it up specifically by themselves. So we're back into a potential situation where they could say, we want to do a higher density zoning overlay over parts of Turnagain, which allows, higher density. And there would be no written notice of property owners. There might be a public notice in a paper. There might be a posting somewhere, and it might show up in a assembly agenda item. Most people wouldn't see it. Most people wouldn't know about it. And the opportunity for public involvement would be show up at the hearing, take your 3 to 5 minutes to testify. Thank you very much, and we'll deliberate.
And
And
John,
so-
that would also include no notification for councils. Is that
The
correct?
council, they actually have included notification of community
Okay, so
councils.
councils would still be
yes,
notified.
which is a good thing. They have notified, the community council would be notified. But this does potentially allow some fairly substantive rezonings that most people would not be aware were happening until they were done. And so we've crafted some testimony saying that, we recognize the plans support this being
Well,
initiated by the
now that you're going,
administration.
so, excuse me, John, so now
Go
that you're
ahead.
getting into the actual document, why
Yep.
don't we go ahead and break to have a formal motion to ratify TCC co-chairs comments on AO 2025-40 amending Title 21 to create 2 new zoning processes. So if somebody would so move.
I move that we approve this.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second? I'll second it. Okay, so go ahead, John. Sorry to interrupt.
That's fine. So I think the resolution was circulated as part of the meeting announcement. And, as I've said, we've sort of taken the position that we support this goal of allowing the administration to initiate zoning, but we have concerns about the details of how the community would be involved in these initiatives and the timing and adequacy of public notice. And the original version that went out had 3 bullets under the community involvement in municipally initiated land use and zoning changes. And our concern again here is that these are far-reaching actions, but there's just a really high likelihood of these things being approved without people knowing they're actually happening. So, I've added an additional bullet that just says that a portion of this eliminates the requirement that any rezoning that implements the comp plan and rezonings initiated by the Assembly, the Administration, and the Planning Commission does not have to have a discussion among stakeholders and goes kind of straight to a assembly meeting if that's which they do. And I say this is really not a substitute for dialogue. A second bullet I've added removes, part of this ordinance removes the ability to protest a rezoning that's initiated by the planning department, Planning and Zoning Commission Assembly. And if they're going to do that, that there needs to be adequate community involvement in developing the rezoning proposal. And then the 3 other bullets sort of have to do with really wanting to see a commitment by the municipality in engaging stakeholders as they craft these things before being done as a done deal at a particular meeting. And then talked a little bit in the second piece about this in terms of the adequacy and timing of public notice. And, given that they're doing away with written public notice, that's potentially a problem. People won't know that something's being proposed. And again, sort of emphasizing that, there really needs to be a process to engage the community, whether it's a working group or something else, before they craft these things. They show up on short notice with a Assembly or Planning and Zoning Commission agenda and get passed. So I think that kind of summarizes what the intent of this is. I also added that when they say that they can justify proposed rezoning because it implements the comp plan or protects public health, safety, and welfare, we'd really like to see some substantive analysis that backs that fairly broad determination, so they can't make a general statement and say that's what we can do this. The second thing we've asked is that there should be an annual review to see if rezonings are having the desired effects or if they're creating unanticipated adverse impacts to neighborhoods. And this has been one of our common requirements with recent land use changes, to make sure, hey, if you're going to pass this stuff, look at it, see if it's going to have the effect, and if there's any adverse effects. I note on one of the assembly items this meeting that they're actually creating some unanticipated adverse effects of a previous ordinance they passed. So it just kind of reinforces that they need to be looking at what they're doing and what the effects are. So I guess that's kind of the summary. I don't know if people have any questions or comments.
Okay, does anybody have any thoughts on the comments that were submitted already to the Assembly for their next Tuesday public hearing on this? Any questions of John? Okay,
Yes, I have
so,
one. Sorry.
oh, go ahead, John.
John, one question for you. Do you believe, in fact, that the comments that were submitted by you will in fact be taken into consideration by the Assembly or not?
I mean, that's really a good question. The comments I've submitted are going into their packet. There's actually a work session tomorrow in which they're going to discuss this at City Hall, and I'm going to go attend that work session and see if I can talk to a couple people. I'm going to send this to Anna. I'm going to send this to Cameron, and all I can, and then testify Tuesday night. All I can say is we will see. An awful lot of what they've done over the past couple of years, as you've just talked about earlier, is you testify. They might be writing notes. They don't ask you any questions. Close the hearing. Thank you very much. This is what we're going to do. And seldom do they make amendments to change the proposed ordinance based on the testimony they've heard. I would like to hope they will. I can't guarantee it. What I have found that I think we've been making enough constructive noise that they're now asking us to participate in working groups where they consider this stuff, and they are slowing down the process between when they introduce it and when they act on it. So we are having an effect. I may have a conversation with Anna personally about this and see what she says and get a feel for what they might do.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any questions on the comments submitted on behalf of John and myself as Land Use Committee co-chairs that need to be ratified? If not, let's go ahead and take a vote. So, or ask if there's any objection. Does anybody have any objection to supporting the motion? If so, then we will definitely take a vote. No objection? Okay, so no objection by the body to the motion to ratify the Turnagain Community Council Land Use Committee co-chairs of comments on 2025-4 that will go before the Assembly for a public hearing on April 8th. So that motion is, or these comments are now approved. Ratified for approval. Have to use that word. Okay, thanks again so much, John. You just earned another certificate, really, is what you just did, but
The night's not over yet.
the night's not over yet. Okay, the fun continues. Everybody's still, enjoying themselves, if that's a requirement. I'm not sure if that's a requirement to attend this meeting or not. Okay, the next item on the agenda is also under old and new business, and it's approval consideration of Fish Creek Trail Connection TCC resolution regarding land use committee meeting reschedule request. And John, if you want to speak to that, or if you want me to jump in as well, but since I did not attend that open house, it's probably best you just continue on for this effort.
Well, let's, I guess, go through the history. And the history, I guess, back in 2022, the community council passed a resolution supporting the concept of a Fish Creek connection trail, but they had specific concerns and conditions they wanted addressed before they could fully support the trail. And I think there were 4 of them at that time, if I remember correctly, when we passed it. And there were also some attached maps showing, property concerns and things like that. This project kind of puttered along for a couple years between the time we passed that resolution and they were doing additional studies. And then we got a presentation from the project team, I think at our February meeting, and that an open house was scheduled for March 19th. And we agreed as a council and sent emails to them early on in January saying, we need a land use committee meeting to have a detailed discussion of the proposed route and some of our concerns. And one of the reasons for that is that the way DOT open houses are typically done is they are not public hearings. There's no presentation. There's no time for questions and answers. People can hear. They're, personally speaking, kind of engineered so that you can talk to people around maps and boards and ask them questions, but no one else gets to hear the answers. And from this last meeting, it doesn't even look like people were taking notes of the conversations they were having. If I remember correctly, Steve Montooth was there. I can't remember if Pat was there. I know Jean and Kathleen Belosky was there. Sandy was there. And
Haxby was there.
and John Hack, thank you. For most importantly, John Haxby was there. And I think you guys have some observations about how satisfied you were with that meeting. So anyways, we asked them for a land use committee meeting and they committed to a land use committee meeting before the open house because we wanted to have a chance to ask questions and be informed before we went to the open house. We had the land use committee meeting scheduled for the 12th of March when I originally scheduled it with their project team. I said, we're going to need space for 30 to 40 people. Our land use committee meetings are open to the public and we could have that many people. Do you have space for that meeting? And the CRW folks said, yes, we have space for that meeting. Then I started getting some nervous communication from them as the land use committee meeting came closer saying, can we keep this to like about 6 or 8 people? We're not sure we want to have that many people. And we said, no, this is what our land use committee meeting is. At our last community council meeting, we had a discussion about this and decided to send a notice out to folks the Friday before the land use committee meeting that we were having a land use committee meeting and that it would be held at CRW. The notice went out. At the end of that day, we received an email saying from CRW that we are canceling the meeting and want to reschedule it. We're not prepared to have the meeting at that time. And so we already sent the notice out. Kathy had to scramble and send a new notice out that we were canceling the meeting. I went down there and put signs on the door so people wouldn't show up that Friday and show up that day and get pissed off that there was no meeting. And so they, quote unquote, in their email said, we would like to reschedule it. I went to the open house. I met with Matt Edge, who's their consultant, and I actually expressed some displeasure fairly diplomatically, but I expressed displeasure in an email to them after they canceled the meeting that it created a hardship for us. And I went to Matt to say, we want to reschedule it. And he was kind of non-committal and defensive. I then went to Keegan Taylor, who is the municipal co-project manager, said, look, we want to reschedule this meeting, and she was much more supportive. But in talking with the board, we decided we wanted to make a formal resolution requesting that they reschedule the meeting, because we do not want to allow them to let this drop. So hence, that is the resolution before us to request that the EMS project team reschedule the meeting with us, and that we will determine a time and a location. And
You
I
have a
don't know
second?
if John or Steve or others have any comments about that meeting.
This is John. I'll give you my quick comments about it. I observed pretty much the same thing that you observed. Nobody was taking notes. It wasn't a formal presentation. It was pretty much, this is what we've decided we're going to do, and you guys can like it. We've had lots of public process in this, and lots of people support it, and this is what we're going to do. You guys can, no other options are on the table, and we're not going to consider anything else. It's pretty much what I got from.
Steve, do you have any observations from attending the meeting? And unmute.
Yeah, my observation, it seems like it was a lot like that meeting that was last year. A lot of maps spread out, a lot of details if you wanted to ask questions. There was really no discussion other than that. It was a pretty good, thorough presentation of what they're planning, and that was all.
I mean, I would say that the maps that they presented were detailed. They were sort of a section line type presentation. They show where the right of way was. They showed where their zone of construction impacts were. They showed property lines, and I want to reiterate what we talked about a little bit earlier is, the portrayal of property lines is not as simple as is made out. The new piece of information is they showed details about how they were going to move the coastal trail out into the mudflats between the tunnel under the railroad and the Fish Creek Bridge. And they are going to sort of move the trail out in a half moon, which means there's going to be some fill. It means they're going to be cutting vegetation. It means they are going to be providing some armor rock to protect it from tides. And one of the reasons to do so, which is legitimate, and they stated, is that the current coastal trail between those 2 points is very dangerous. There's bad sight distances. There's been a lot of accidents, and they want to use this project as an opportunity to try to fix that and move the trail out. And that's brand new information that none of us had seen before that meeting. And so there is really value in the land use committee and TCC members who wish to attend, which are kind of informally the land use committee, to sit down, go over the maps and ask questions. That's the intent.
I would concur with you.
They say.
I would concur with you, John. The maps, the details they provided this time were much more detailed. Not that I like them anymore, but they're much more detailed, and it was a surprise as to what they plan to do in Cook Inlet. And I was actually very surprised that they've gotten pre-approval from the Corps of Engineers for that fill stuff, and that it is within the existing environmental, what is it, the document?
Categorical exclusion.
Yeah, I was really surprised to hear that it's already been addressed in the categorical exclusion, and the categorical exclusion applies in this case, and they're the judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah. And I guess there's one thing I want to add about the categorical exclusion. We had sort of talked about this, that this requires an environmental analysis to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act. And there are 3 levels of analysis. There's a categorical exclusion, which is typically a checklist. Does it do this, 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 and this? An environmental assessment, which has to look at alternatives and come up with assessment of impacts. An environmental impact statement, which is much more thorough and usually for bigger projects. And like John said, when I asked them, is the Corps going to do its own environmental assessment? They said, no, they're probably going to adopt the categorical exclusion. When they told me that the categorical exclusion was nearly 900 pages, they were having trouble putting it on the website, but it would be there soon. I thought, great, there's a subsequent assessment of environmental impacts in that. The answer is no. There's about a 12-page checklist, and then it's comments, agency comments. It's a supported wetland study. It's a supported wildlife study. And nowhere did I see a kind of comprehensive assessment of potential impact categories, even if it was in a relatively low level. So again, I was disappointed when I saw the environmentalist, the category exclusion, and that's a different question. What we do about that. But again, I think the intent here is we want to have the land use committee meeting with them. We want to sit down, we want to look at the maps. We want to ask questions, we want to hear answers, and that will probably then inform what the council wants to do next in terms of taking action regarding the Fish Creek Trail.
I'd give you a
John-
motion to approve.
Okay, so
I second.
Kathy, you might want to see if there's a second, see if there's any comments on that.
yeah, so sorry. So who seconded it? Sorry.
I second it. Steve, why don't you?
Oh, thank you, Steve. Yeah, I have a comment if you don't mind. When you said because unfortunately I was not able to attend that open house, and I have not seen all that detail mapping that those who were present got to see. When you said that they want to relocate the coastal trail from the railroad bridge, that span of the trail, railroad bridge, up to the bridge that goes over Fish Creek as it empties out into the ocean. Is that
Yes.
what you said, John?
Yes, and you would agree, John?
Yes, I would agree, or it's at least close to that
Pretty
bridge.
close.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
okay.
pretty close.
Well, I think that's really, really important to know exactly how far they want to go, because we would need to look at Great Land Trust. They don't own the land anymore. They gave it to the Muni, but there were conditions on that transfer of Fish Creek Estuary.
No, that
And
goes
if-
into first.
and if just let me finish. So if the western section of the relocation of the coastal trail falls within the formal estuary boundaries, then that's a whole different level of potential evaluation, because then Great Land Trust would likely get involved, and they've stepped out once the alternatives avoided overlapping with the estuary boundaries.
I don't think it does overlap the estuary boundaries. The
Okay.
estuary boundaries that I have seen remain within Fish Creek up to the coastal trail, and then include the river that goes out into Cook Inlet, but I think it stops underneath the bridge.
The boundary stops under the bridge?
Yeah, I think it stops. I'm not sure
Okay.
how far it goes, but from what I've seen, the boundaries are contained within the boundaries generally, although I could be wrong here.
Well, I'm just saying, without having not seen the maps and not knowing, having refreshed my memory on the estuary boundary, I just would say we'd want to know about that.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's
and-
good reason to look at the detailed drawings.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah, absolutely.
And
And-
I have the documents, actually the transfer documents, and it was in reverse of what you thought, Kathy. It was originally deeded to the municipality of Anchorage, who further deeded it to the Great Land Trust.
I'll take your word on that, because I'm not sure I understood what you just said. But regardless, it would just determine whether Great Land Trust should be in, back in involvement of this, or if it's not within their boundary, and then they probably wouldn't have any say over it, or they wouldn't provide any kind of input on it.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded.
Yes. Is there any other discussion? Anybody else want to weigh in on this formal request by TCC to have a rescheduled land use committee meeting so that we can discuss in greater detail what their proposal is now that they've gotten it a lot further along and in terms of visuals? Does not look like it, so let's go ahead and let me go ahead and ask, is there any objection to approval of the presented resolution? Any objection at all? If not, then that motion is approved. And we will submit that to the project team and see where we're at. I did have feedback from the Federation of Community Councils to see what the availability of their conference room is for this month. And I didn't put it to memory, but I'll have to go back and look. There are some times and dates available, but was informed that they book up pretty quickly. So I guess we would have to, contact the project team and say, and collaboratively pick a good date that's mutually beneficial or available for everybody involved. So motion approved.
Okay, and Kathy, one thing I want to add, I just took a quick look at the project website, and there now is information on their page, which is sort of resources and presentations, and there's a list of maps, and it appears they have just put the 3 detailed maps that they presented at the open house on the website, and they're listed as scroll 1, scroll 2, and scroll 3. And scroll 3 is the detailed schematic, aerial schematic of where they're going to be putting the reconstructed coastal trail with sort of a photograph underneath it. So that information is now available for people to look at and download.
Okay, that's great. And just as a side note, with regard to size of who might attend a land use committee meeting, I mean, we have no way of knowing. And that's, we never restrict and say, no, only 8 people can attend our meeting, or sure, 40 people can show up. We have no way of, they're publicly noticed, and it still is perplexing why, the project team just felt like they kind of wanted to control the amount of people that may or may not attend. And we might have 5 people show up when we schedule this. We just have no way of knowing. So it's just good that we decided to make sure that they know that we still want to have the detail and have an opportunity to discuss it with them, rather than they say, here it is, here's an open house, let me know if you have any questions. And then, as John alluded to, after that, we'll decide if we want to take any more action in terms of positions on the trail, see if our conditions on our initial resolution have been met. And that did not include relocation of a coastal trail, because we didn't know that was going to be part of the plan till a couple of years later. So, so here we are. Okay, so moving on to committee reports, and we're doing pretty well on time. I know sometimes that's not always the case, but okay. So John, we at the board meeting, we talked about if there was any update to the municipal right-of-way snow and management strategy, since you kind of serve on that body.
Yeah, I've been working hard to get a hold of Tom Davis, and he's been really hard to get a hold of. He just doesn't, he's not answering emails, he's not answering his phone. I have
wonder if he's on vacation,
could be.
Yeah.
So no new update there. Hopefully I will hear something, because I mean, they had talked about a public meeting, but they haven't notified the working group members of anything. So nothing new. The second thing we added they want to talk to is the comprehensive plan update.
Yeah.
And I had picked up some information in a conversation about what's happening with Melissa Babb in terms of upcoming planning projects. And then Kathy, she made a presentation about their intent at the Federation of Community Council meeting, correct?
Yes.
And it seems that their intent, as you alluded to earlier, that there's going to be a update of the comprehensive plan and 2040 land use plan, that it's going to be focused on housing and housing strategies. And I think a lot of the focus is going to be on action items and implementation. They are planning to allow the Planning and Zoning Commission to run with it, which they said partly is because they're short-staffed. And that also implies that the public process is going to be testifying before the Planning and Zoning Commission. And they haven't made any commitment to any public meetings or community councils or anything else. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Kathy.
Well, now, when looking back on the notes I took at the last FCC delegate meeting, so she indicated that the first work session in front of Planning and Zoning Commission is April 14th. But I don't know if that's still the case, and I haven't looked at the Muni calendar.
Yeah, we'll have to look at the calendar.
My comment, both at the FCC delegate meeting and then also at the candidates forum, since we had Cameron and a potential new assembly person for Midtown, and it looks like she will win that election when they're finalized and certified and all the votes counted. She had a good lead.
And a new person,
Aaron Baldwin
Braga.
Day.
Yeah.
And you know, Cameron indicated when I said that my question to Melissa is, normally when you update substantial plans like that, there's working groups, there's public input along the way. And that's when she said, we don't have staffing to deal with it. That's why they're using the Planning and Zoning Commission to do all the work, to one, come up with potential changes. Then the Planning and Zoning Commission, after a series of work sessions, will go back to the planning department and say, here are these recommended amendments and changes to these two plans. And then the planning department will put that into a formal document, put it back to PNZ for a public hearing, and then it would go before the assembly for a public hearing. And nowhere in that chain is there an opportunity to have more of a public dialogue about it. So Cameron
Kathy,
said,
can I make a comment?
he said, just let me go ahead and finish. Cameron said that he would be happy to work with me, and I thought, well, not just me, but anyway, to ensure that there is more of a public involvement step in that. And Aaron's response was, yes, but we definitely would want to reach out and have a much larger group to do that. So if that's the case, but the Planning and Zoning Commission first work session is the 14th. I don't even know realistically how that's going to really be a thing. So yeah, John, sorry, go ahead.
No apologies. I interrupted you. I apologize. Number one, if whoever was around circa 2003, 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, when the original building codes of the city of Anchorage were flipped into Title 21, adopted in total from Portland, without pretty much any comment, public input at all. You can expect the same situation. You can expect the same situation right here with this type of a tight schedule. Public comment is going to get ignored and brushed to the side, no different than a 3-minute end of the assembly meeting public comment period. You got 3 minutes. I'm just warning you. Happened in the last time when Title 21 got adopted. It's likely at this speed to happen the same way with this.
Yeah, I don't know how high our expectations should be or how low. It is a very targeted. They're not looking at redoing goals, as John said, just looking at action items and implementation items only with regard to housing not parks, not, you know, commercial development, nothing. And so it's hard for me to know, you know, where then they draw that line and where they don't cross over that line in some of their recommendations. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, and Kathy, I know, there's a number of community councils that are concerned about this, and there has been some email trees going back and forth, and I think one of the things that may happen, and this is one of the things I want to talk to Ari about to see if FCC can support it, is that a number of community councils may want to band together and try to find a way to suggest early involvement by community councils in developing some of the concepts as compared to being presented with them and having to testify at a meeting.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, because certainly with P and Z having the role of review and recommendations, you know, that's going to be the first part of a work session before their regular meeting, starting probably on April 14th and moving forward for weeks, if not months, depending on how long they take to do that. But there's no, I mean, we can sit in on all those work sessions, but we can't stand up and say anything. We can't raise our hand and ask a question. It's just like a regular meeting in that the public participation level is non-existent. It's not formatted to provide for a dialogue with the public in those work sessions. And that's unfortunate. Okay, well, and yeah, so is there anything else anybody wants to add? We have 9 minutes before 8 minutes before we have to adjourn. So anybody want to provide any other input at this point? If not, I will ask for a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
Okay, could I have a second, please?
This is Pat, I'll second.
Thank you, Pat. Is there any objection to adjourning this evening's April 3rd, 2025 meeting? If not, meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much for everybody's participation and attendance. We really appreciate it. I think we had some really good items on our agenda this month. And so enjoy the rest of your evening. There's still a little bit of daylight left that I can see out our window. And take care, and we will be in touch soon on more community council stuff. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, thanks all.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Okay.